I'm Crystal Harper, 28 years old, and I will never forget the moment I limped into that Denver courtroom, the sound of my crutches echoing against the polished floor. My heart pounded as I faced my family sitting there smugly, thinking they had already won. But their eyes widened when they saw me, alive, standing tall, despite the pain shooting through my leg. Yet it was the woman beside me who made my father leap from his seat, his face pale as he shouted, "Oh my God, it's her!" The entire room froze. They thought they had buried my future in that hospital bed where I was left alone in a coma, abandoned as if I was nothing. They believed they could steal everything I had worked for, a $10 million contract, my life's achievement. But they were wrong. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. If it were you, would you make them pay or give them a chance to make things right? Comment below and let's debate. It all started months before that courtroom showdown. I just walked out of a sleek Denver office tower, my hands trembling as I clutched the signed contract. $10 million. My AI algorithm, a breakthrough in medical diagnostics, had landed me a deal with a major healthcare corporation. Years of late nights, endless coding, and pushing past doubts had paid off. I was 28, a software engineer at the top of my game, and I couldn't wait to share the news with my family. I drove to our suburban home, my heart racing with pride, imagining their faces lighting up. I was wrong. When I stepped through the front door, my sister was there, sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes narrowed. She was 32, a project manager at my company, always polished, always in control. But that day, something was off. I held up the contract, grinning, and said, "I did it! $10 million for my algorithm." Her lips twitched, not into a smile, but a grimace. "Your algorithm?" she snapped. "You mean the one I've been overseeing? The one I push through meetings?" Her voice dripped with venom, and I froze. I'd always known she was competitive, always the golden child who got our parents' praise while I scraped for scraps of approval. But this was different. This was rage. I tried to explain that the algorithm was my work, my code, my sleepless nights. She stood, her chair scraping the floor, and stepped closer. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" she hissed. I backed away, my hands raised, trying to calm her. "This isn't about you," I said, my voice shaking. But she wasn't listening. We were at the top of the stairs now, arguing, her face inches from mine. "You're nothing without me," she spat, and then in a flash, her hands shoved my shoulders. I stumbled, my foot catching air, and the world spun as I fell. Pain exploded in my head, my body crashing down the wooden steps, and then darkness. As I fell, fragments of memories flashed through my mind. I saw us as children, her snatching my favorite doll when she was 6, holding it above her head while I cried, our mother praising her for being assertive. I saw myself at 10, showing my parents my science project, only to have my father wave it away as not practical, while they cooed over her watercolor painting. I saw family dinners where I was invisible, birthday parties where my achievements went unmentioned, years of seeking approval that never came. The fall seemed to last forever, each impact against the stairs jolting through my body. My head struck wood once, twice, 3 times. My leg twisted at an angle that sent fire through my nerves. And then finally the floor. The pain was everywhere and nowhere at once, my consciousness flickering like a dying light. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was my sister standing at the top of the stairs, her silhouette backlit by the hallway light. She wasn't moving. She wasn't calling for help. She was just watching. And then there was nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed, the beeping of machines filling the silence. My head throbbed, my leg ached, and a nurse's voice cut through the fog. She said, "You're awake?" I blinked, trying to piece it together. I asked how long. She replied, 2 weeks. 2 weeks in a coma. 2 weeks! The words echoed in my mind, bouncing off the walls of my confusion. I tried to move, but pain shot through my body, reminding me of the fall, the stairs, my sister's hands on my shoulders. I winced, my fingers gripping the thin hospital sheets. I asked about my family, my sister, my parents. The nurse hesitated, and then said, "No one's been here. Your parents called once early on, but they haven't come." My chest tightened. I'd expected my sister to stay away after what she'd done, but my parents? I thought of my father, always distant, and my mother always siding with her favorite daughter. Did they say anything? I asked, dreading the answer. The nurse looked away and said, "They said you brought this on yourself, that you shamed them." I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the words cutting deeper than the fall. My own parents dismissing me like I was nothing. I thought back to the contract, my moment of triumph now tainted by my sister's jealousy. She hadn't just pushed me down the stairs, she'd tried to erase me. And my parents, the people who should have been at my bedside praying for me, had turned their backs. I clenched my fists. The pain in my body was nothing compared to the betrayal in my heart. As days dragged on, my isolation grew heavier. The hospital room felt like a cage, its walls closing in as I lay there, my body aching from the fall. No one from my family showed up. Not my parents, not my sister. I kept glancing at the door, hoping for someone to care, but it stayed shut. The nurses moved quietly, their routines a blur, and I was left alone with my thoughts, replaying the sting of my family's betrayal. I'd always been the outsider in their eyes, overshadowed by my sister's charm, but their absence now cut deeper than ever. I wondered if they even knew I was awake, or if they simply didn't care. Memories flooded back, uninvited and relentless. I remembered being 15, winning first place at the regional science fair for a prototype medical sensor. I'd rushed home, bursting through the door with my trophy, only to find my mother cooing over my sister's art project, a mediocre watercolor that had received an honorable mention. "That's nice, Crystal," my mother had said without looking up. "But look at how your sister captured the light." I remembered my father at the dinner table when I was 22, fresh out of college with my computer science degree. I'd told him about my job offer at a tech company, my eyes bright with possibility. He'd taken a sip of his wine and said, "That's fine, but your sister's already managing projects. Real leadership potential." The words had stung then. They burned now. I thought of every achievement I'd fought for, every late night I'd spent coding, every doubt I'd pushed through, all of it to prove I was worthy of their love. And here I was, broken in a hospital bed, and they couldn't even be bothered to visit? The nurse came in to check my vitals, her movements efficient but gentle. "How are you feeling today?" she asked. "Alone," I said, the word escaping before I could stop it. She paused, her hand on my wrist, taking my pulse. She said, "I'm sorry," quietly, and I believed her. A stranger cared more about my well-being than my own blood. That night, I stared at the ceiling, the fluorescent lights humming above me. The physical pain was manageable. The doctors had me on medication for that. But the emotional pain? That was a different beast entirely. It wrapped around my chest, squeezing until I couldn't breathe, until tears leaked from the corners of my eyes, and I had to bite my lip to keep from sobbing. I'd spent my entire life seeking their approval. Every achievement, every success, every sacrifice, it had all been for them, to make them see me, to make them proud, to make them love me. But lying there in that hospital bed, abandoned and alone, I finally understood the truth. They never would. One morning, my sister appeared without warning. She stood at the edge of my bed, her arms folded, a smirk twisting her face. "Still clinging to life, huh?" she said, her voice sharp and cold. "You're holding everyone back, you know." Pain flared in my leg as I tried to shift, glaring at her. "Why are you here?" I asked, my throat tight. She leaned closer, her eyes glinting. "Just making sure you stay out of my way," she said, then straightened up and walked out, her footsteps echoing. Her words weren't just cruel. They carried a weight, like she was guarding a secret. I clenched the bedsheet, my anger simmering. She wasn't just mocking me. She was up to something. For days after her visit, I replayed her words in my mind. Holding everyone back. What did that mean? Was she talking about our parents? About work? The more I thought about it, the less sense it made, unless she was doing something that required me to be out of the picture. The hospital room felt smaller than ever, the walls pressing in as my mind raced through possibilities. My sister had always been calculating, always 3 steps ahead. She didn't do anything without a reason. This visit hadn't been about checking on me or gloating. It had been a warning. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Capable of closing the deal, that she had to step in and save everything. She looked up at me, anger flashing in her eyes. "Crystal, she's rewriting history. People at work who know you built that algorithm from the ground up are starting to question it because she's so confident, so convincing." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of it. This was exactly what my sister did best: manipulation, reframing narratives, making people believe her version of reality. She'd done it our whole lives with our parents, and now she was doing it at work. "There's more," Cynthia said hesitantly. "I overheard her in the break room yesterday, talking to Mark from accounting. She was saying something about taking care of the paperwork and that everything's falling into place. When she saw me, she stopped talking immediately." Mark. I knew him, a weak-willed colleague who'd always been too eager to please anyone with authority. If my sister had recruited him, she was building something bigger than just workplace gossip. "What do I do?" I asked, feeling helpless in the hospital bed. Cynthia squeezed my hand. "You fight back. But first, you need to know exactly what she's doing." She stood up, her expression determined. "I'm going to start documenting everything, every email, every conversation I overhear. We're going to figure out what she's planning." After Cynthia left, I felt something shift inside me. The grief and shock were still there, the pain of abandonment still raw, but underneath it, something harder was forming. Anger, determination, a refusal to let my sister erase me. I'd spent my entire life being the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who absorbed the neglect and kept trying to earn love that would never come. But lying in that hospital bed, I made a decision. I was done seeking their approval. I was done being invisible. My sister thought she'd won. She thought pushing me down those stairs, leaving me in a coma, stealing my work. She thought all of it would go unchallenged because I'd always been too passive, too desperate for family harmony to fight back. She was wrong. That night, I grabbed my phone, wincing as my fingers fumbled with the screen. I needed to check my bank account, hoping to at least secure my finances for the mounting hospital bills and start planning my next move. The app loaded, and a red alert flashed across the screen. Account frozen. My heart pounded. I stared at the words, reading them again and again, unable to process what I was seeing. I called the bank, my voice shaking, and the representative's words chilled me to the bone. "A court order froze your funds," she said. "It cites concerns about your ability to manage them." Ability? I'd just woken from a coma, fighting to survive, and someone was trying to paint me as incompetent. My sister's visit, her smug confidence, her boasts at work, it all clicked into place. This wasn't just abandonment. This wasn't just theft. This was a conspiracy. A week later, a stranger walked into my hospital room. He introduced himself as Daniel, my lawyer, a man in his 30s with sharp eyes and a calm voice.
He carried a thick folder, his expression serious as he sat beside my bed. "He's here about your contract," he said, sliding a stack of papers toward me. My heart raced as I scanned the documents. They were legal forms, stamped and official, declaring me incapacitated, unable to manage my own affairs. My signature was scrawled at the bottom, but I'd never signed these. "These were filed to transfer your $10 million deal," he said, his tone steady but grim. "Someone's trying to take everything." I gripped the papers, my mind spinning. My sister's smirk from the hospital visit flashed in my head. This had her name all over it. I asked Daniel how he'd found me. He explained that a colleague at my company, worried about my absence, had hired him to investigate. "The court order freezing your bank account was just the start," he said, flipping to another page. "These documents claim you're unfit to work based on your medical records." I stared at him, disbelief turning to dread. My medical records? I'd barely been awake a week and someone was already rewriting my story. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low. "We need to dig deeper, but this looks deliberate." I nodded, my anger rising. My sister wasn't just stealing my contract, she was trying to erase my competence, my identity. That afternoon, a doctor came to see me. She was in her 40s, her face kind but resolute, and she introduced herself as Dr. Price, the one who'd overseen my care. "She found something troubling," she said, pulling up my chart on a tablet. "Your medical records were altered after you were admitted." My breath caught. She pointed to entries showing extended sedation and exaggerated neurological issues, none of which matched my recovery. She said, "Someone added these to make it look like you'd never wake up." She said, her eyes meeting mine. "That's why the court order went through so fast." I felt a chill. This wasn't just about money. It was about keeping me out of the picture permanently. As I lay there, the pieces started to connect. My sister had always been controlling, ever since we were kids. I remember her at 6, snatching my favorite doll and claiming it as hers, smirking as our parents praised her for being assertive. By 10, she'd mastered turning their attention away from me, convincing them that I was the problem whenever I spoke up. As teenagers, she'd manipulate every family decision, from vacation plans to who got the bigger room, always painting me as the selfish one.
My parents never questioned her. They adored her confidence, her charm. I'd spent years trying to prove myself, building my AI algorithm to show I was more than her shadow. But now, she'd taken it to a new level, orchestrating a plan to strip me of everything I'd earned. I looked at Daniel, then at Dr. Price, their faces steady with determination. They believed in me even when my own family didn't. The forged documents, the altered records, it was all my sister's doing, with my parents likely turning a blind eye as always. I thought of her boasts at work, her cruel words in the hospital. She thought she'd won, that I'd stay broken. But she'd underestimated me. I handed the papers back to Daniel, my voice firm. "We're fighting this," I said. He nodded, a spark in his eyes. Dr. Price promised to document every discrepancy in my records. I wasn't just fighting for my contract, I was fighting for my life. Determined to fight back, I made a bold decision. Against medical advice, I checked myself out of the hospital and arranged to move into a temporary apartment with Cynthia's help. My body still ached, my legs still required crutches, but I needed to be in control again. Daniel wasted no time. He brought in a private investigator, a sharp woman in her late 30s with a no-nonsense demeanor and expertise in financial forensics. "Call me Sarah," she said, spreading files across my small kitchen table. Within days, she'd uncovered something crucial. "Your sister made several payments to a colleague named Mark," Sarah said, pointing to bank statements. $10,000, transferred in 3 installments over 2 weeks. Mark. The name made my stomach turn. He was always hovering around my sister at work, eager to please anyone with authority. Now I knew why. "He's been forging company documents," Sarah continued, "making it look like your sister was the lead developer on your algorithm." My blood boiled. She wasn't just taking credit, she was paying to rewrite history. Cynthia arrived with another piece of the puzzle. "I found these," she said, forwarding a chain of internal company emails to my phone. I opened them, my hands shaking. In one, my sister had written to our boss, "With Crystal out, I'm stepping in to replace her. The contract's in good hands." Another email bragged about her vision for the algorithm, as if I have never existed. Each word was a knife, but each word was also evidence. "She's been planning this for weeks," Cynthia said, her voice tight with anger. "Everyone at work thinks she's the hero." I thanked her, my resolve hardening. These emails were proof that my sister was trying to erase me from my own success. That night, Daniel and I sat in his cluttered office, surrounded by legal books and case files. "We need one more thing," he said. "We need her to admit it." He explained Colorado's one-party consent law. I could legally record a conversation without the other person knowing. If you can get her to confess, we'll have everything we need. The thought of facing my sister again made my chest tighten, but I knew it was necessary. "Set it up," I said. Over the next few days, my team became my lifeline. Daniel worked tirelessly on legal strategy, Sarah traced every financial thread, Dr. Price prepared her medical testimony, and Cynthia gathered workplace evidence. They were the family I should have had. People who showed up, who believed in me, who fought for me. As I prepared for the cafe meeting with my sister, I felt fear mixing with determination. This wasn't just about winning. This was about reclaiming my voice, my truth, my life. I walked into the quiet Denver cafe, my legs still weak, a small recorder hidden in my jacket pocket. My heart pounded as I spotted my sister already seated, sipping coffee with casual arrogance. This was the first time we'd been alone since she pushed me down those stairs, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But I forced myself to sit down, playing the role of defeated sibling seeking understanding. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face before settling into that familiar smirk. "You're up," she said, her tone mocking. "Didn't think you'd make it." I forced a weak smile, keeping my voice soft. "I wanted to talk about what happened." She leaned back, relaxed. "What's there to talk about? You fell. Accidents happen." I swallowed my anger and asked about work, about the contract. "I heard you've been handling things," I said carefully. Her eyes lit up with satisfaction. "The contract's moving forward," she said. "Someone had to step up since you're indisposed." I pressed gently, keeping my voice curious rather than accusatory. "You mean my contract? The algorithm I developed?" She laughed, cold and sharp. "It's mine now. You weren't going to make it happen from a hospital bed." She took another sip of coffee, completely at ease. "Besides, I've been overseeing the project. Everyone knows I'm the one who made it viable." The recorder in my pocket captured every word. I asked one more question, my hands clenched under the table. "So you're taking over completely?" "Already have," she said, leaning forward. "The company needs someone competent, someone who can actually close deals. You were always good at the technical stuff, but let's be honest, you never had the leadership skills." She smiled. That same smirk she'd given me my whole life when she took something that was mine. "This is better for everyone." I stood up, my legs shaking. "I should go," I managed to say.
"Crystal," she called as I turned. I looked back. "Stay out of my way. You've caused enough problems." I walked out of that cafe, my hands trembling, but my evidence secure. Every cruel word, every admission of theft, it was all recorded, clear and damning. Back at my apartment, I met with Daniel and played him the recording. His eyes widened as my sister's voice filled the room. "It's mine now. You weren't going to make it happen from a hospital bed." "This is it," Daniel said quietly. "This is exactly what we need." I felt something release in my chest. Not satisfaction, Not triumph, but validation. I had proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't wrong. My sister had tried to steal my life's work, and now her own words would condemn her. What happens now? I asked. Daniel looked at me with fierce determination. Now we take her to court. In Daniel's cluttered Denver law office, surrounded by case files and legal books, my team finalized the strategy. Daniel leaned forward, his expression serious. We're filing a lawsuit, charging fraud, conspiracy, and deprivation of contract. He said, we're targeting your sister and Mark directly and pursuing civil damages against your parents for their complicity. I nodded, absorbing the weight of his words. This was really happening. The cafe recording is our cornerstone, Daniel continued, tapping the folder in front of him. In Colorado, one-party consent makes it admissible. Combined with the emails Cynthia gathered, the forged documents, the altered medical records, and Sarah's financial evidence, we have an airtight case. Dr. Price had already prepared her medical testimony, documenting every unauthorized change to my records. Sarah completed her comprehensive report tracing the money from my sister's account to Mark's, linking the conspiracy's financial trail. Each piece of evidence fit together like code in an algorithm, precise, logical, irrefutable. But as the legal preparation intensified, the emotional reality of what lay ahead crashed over me. I'd have to stand in a courtroom and face my entire family, telling the world how they betrayed me. The thought made my chest tighten. That night, memories I'd tried to bury flooded back. I was 15 again, clutching my first-place science fair trophy, rushing home to share the news. My mother barely looked up from my sister's art project. "That's nice, Crystal," she'd said absently. The trophy sat on a shelf in my room, gathering dust, never mentioned again. I remembered college graduation, watching my father beam with pride as my sister walked across the stage 2 years earlier. When it was my turn, he'd checked his watch twice during the ceremony. "Congratulations," he'd said afterward, already turning to leave. "We have dinner reservations." Every achievement, every milestone, I'd been chasing their approval like it was oxygen, and they'd given me nothing but scraps. Cynthia found me staring out the window of my apartment, tears streaming down my face. "Hey," she said softly, sitting beside me. "Are you okay?" "I keep thinking about all the years I wasted, trying to make them see me, trying to be enough." She squeezed my hand. "You were always enough, Crystal. They were the ones who couldn't see it." Daniel arrived the next morning to run through mock testimony. The defense will try to paint you as unstable, incompetent, maybe even deserving of what happened. You need to stay calm, factual, and credible. We practiced for hours. He asked hard questions, pushed back on my answers, forced me to relive the trauma again and again until I could tell my story without breaking down. It was exhausting, but necessary. "Remember," Daniel said as we wrapped up, "this isn't about revenge. It's about justice. It's about reclaiming what's yours. Not just the contract, but your identity, your truth." I nodded, feeling the resolve harden in my chest. My family had spent a lifetime silencing me, dismissing me, erasing me, but not anymore. The lawsuit was filed, court dates were set, and I prepared to face the people who tried to bury me. The Denver courtroom buzzed with tension as I entered, the sound of my crutches echoing against polished floors. I took my seat beside Daniel, and across the aisle, I saw them. My sister sat with false confidence, her posture perfect, her expression carefully neutral. My parents looked uncomfortable but defiant, their faces tight. Mark sat pale and fidgeting, avoiding eye contact. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, called the court to order. The room fell silent. Daniel stood, his voice clear and commanding. Your Honor, this case is about a calculated conspiracy to defraud my client while she lay vulnerable in a hospital bed. While Crystal Harper fought for her life, her own family orchestrated a scheme to steal everything she had worked for: her intellectual property, her financial security, her very identity. He presented the cafe recording first. The courtroom speakers crackled to life, and my sister's voice filled the space. It's mine now. You weren't going to make it happen from a hospital bed.
The company emails followed. Cynthia's evidence showed my sister's messages to executives. I'm stepping in to replace her. The contract's in good hands. Another email detailed her vision for the algorithm, claiming credit for years of my work. I watched my parents shift in their seats, my mother's hands clutching her purse, my father's jaw clenched. They couldn't look at me. The evidence is overwhelming, Daniel continued. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, premeditated scheme to erase Crystal Harper and steal her life's achievement. My sister's lawyer stood to object, but the judge waved him down. I'll hear the defense's case in due time, she said, her tone brooking no argument. Continue, Mr. Patterson. Daniel presented the timeline. The push down the stairs, the 2-week coma, the immediate filing of legal documents, the altered medical records, the workplace manipulation. Each event connected to the next, a chain of betrayal forged while I lay unconscious. As I sat there, watching my family's crimes laid bare in an official forum, I felt something shift. For the first time in my life, someone with authority was seeing the truth. Someone was believing me. The judge's eyes narrowed as she reviewed the evidence, her expression growing sterner with each revelation. Justice, I realized, might actually be possible. Dr. Price took the witness stand, her demeanor professional and unshakable. Crystal Harper's medical records were altered after her admission, she testified, pulling up charts on the courtroom display. False entries were added suggesting extended sedation and permanent neurological damage, none of which matched her actual condition or recovery. She pointed to specific entries, explaining in precise medical terms which notations were fraudulent and when they were added. These alterations were deliberate, she stated firmly. They were designed to support a legal claim of incompetence that had no medical basis. The courtroom was silent, riveted by her testimony. Then Daniel called me to the stand. My hands shook as I approached, but I kept my voice steady. I described developing my algorithm over years of late nights and endless coding. I spoke about the triumph of securing the $10 million contract. Then I recounted the confrontation with my sister, her hands on my shoulders, the fall down the stairs. I woke up 2 weeks later, alone. No family at my bedside. I learned they'd called once to blame me, to say I'd shamed them. I described discovering the frozen bank account, the forged documents, the realization that my own family was systematically erasing me. My testimony was raw, honest, painful, but it was the truth. The defense attempted to salvage their case. My sister took the stand, her voice controlled. I was protecting the company, she claimed. Crystal was unstable, unfit to lead such a crucial project. Daniel's cross-examination was surgical. You claim she was unfit, yet you never reported concerns to HR before her accident? Why? My sister faltered. It wasn't that simple. You pushed her down the stairs, didn't you? That's not— She fell. It was an accident. An accident you capitalized on by immediately forging legal documents? She had no answer. Mark followed, stammering through his defense. I was just following orders, he said weakly. She asked me to help with paperwork. $10,000 paperwork? Mark crumbled. Finally, the judge spoke. I've reviewed the evidence carefully, she said, her voice carrying the weight of authority. The conspiracy to defraud Miss Harper is proven beyond any doubt. The defendant orchestrated a calculated scheme involving forgery, bribery, and medical fraud. She sentenced my sister to 4 years in prison. Mark received 2 years. And then she turned to my parents in the gallery. Your enabling of this behavior warrants civil liability, the judge declared. You abandoned your daughter in her time of need and turned a blind eye to criminal conduct. You're ordered to pay $75,000 in damages. My mother gasped, burying her face in her hands. My father's shoulders slumped. As the gavel struck, I felt the weight lift. Justice had been served. The truth had won.
Weeks after the verdict, I stood in my new apartment, a modest but bright space with windows overlooking the Denver skyline. The walls were still bare, but they represented possibility rather than emptiness. This was mine, my choice, my fresh start. I'd made the decision to cut all ties with my biological family. No calls, no visits, no more seeking their approval. My sister was serving her 4-year prison sentence. Mark was behind bars for 2 years. My parents were dealing with the financial and social fallout of their $75,000 civil judgment and destroyed reputation in their community. I felt relief rather than satisfaction. I didn't gloat over their downfall, but I was free of their power over me, and that freedom was worth more than any revenge. My $10 million contract was fully restored, my name back where it belonged. I'd already begun developing the next phase of my algorithm, more ambitious than before. But the contract wasn't what mattered most anymore. What mattered was what I did next.
At the Foundation's launch, I stood before the audience, my voice calm but firm. No one should ever feel abandoned in their struggle, I said. No one should be forced to choose between their family and their own well-being, their truth, their survival. I paused, letting the weight of the words linger as I looked at the faces before me. I know the pain of being erased by those who were supposed to love you. This foundation exists so no one else has to face that battle alone. The applause that followed was warm and genuine. People came up afterward, some to share their stories, some to ask how they could support the mission, and others simply to say thank you for giving voice to what they had endured in silence. As I embraced this new chapter of my life, I thought about the path that had led me here. My sister's manipulation and my parents' cold indifference had tried to diminish me, but in the end, they only revealed the strength I never knew I had. I had survived a coma, uncovered their deceit, and confronted them in court. Every step had been terrifying, but I took it anyway. I finally realized I didn't need their approval to understand my worth. Family, I learned, isn't defined by blood. It's defined by the people who choose to stand beside you. For me, those people were Cynthia, Daniel, Dr. Price, and Sarah. They were my real family. The ones who believed in me, defended me, and saw my value when my own parents could not. The greatest lesson wasn't about vengeance or victory. It was about self-trust. For years, I had chased validation, hoping to earn love through achievements that were always ignored. But lying in that hospital bed, abandoned and betrayed, I discovered something far greater. My own strength. I didn't need their recognition. I never did. That night, standing at my window overlooking Denver, city lights glittering below, I felt truly free for the first time. The pain of my past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. What defined me was how I chose to transform it, how I turned betrayal into resilience, and trauma into purpose, helping others find their own strength. I was Crystal Harper, 28 years old. I had built a groundbreaking AI algorithm. I had survived my family's betrayal. I had fought for justice and won. Now I was building a life entirely on my own terms, one where no one could diminish me again. I was enough. I had always been enough. And finally, I believed it.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.